Hi everyone, welcome back to our Advent calendar and welcome back to Stonehaven. Pictures can really make a difference as to how we view things. I recently heard about a bicycle company in the US who had a big issue with bikes being returned damaged in transit. Well, they had to think long and hard because it's not particularly good for business that this was happening, about how to overcome this problem. And somebody encouraged them to think outside of the box, if you'll excuse the pun, about how to overcome it. Their suggestion was simple. Print a different image on the box. Something that will mess with people's minds and think that what they're transporting is something far more fragile than a bike. Well, the image they put on was of a big flat screen TV with a bike in as the picture on the television. Now, you wouldn't think that would make that big of a difference. However, over the first year of doing this, breakages and returns were down 80%. In 1 year, it made that big of a difference. Pictures, you see, really can make a difference in how you view things. And our reading today contains a great picture at the end of it, which might change how you view what you have on your head. They will enter Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will crown their heads. Gladness and joy will overtake them, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. Can you imagine having a crown of joy on your head? What might that even look like? Well, would you be surprised to know that you have one there already, thanks to the actions of Jesus Christ? Well, when we share in our joy about the Christmas story with other people, there's a chance that that joy will radiate out further and further as they share the story too. Now, there are times where we might try and hide our crowns or completely discard them through acts like sin. Well, anyone who's ever tried to walk a baby on a hot summer's day will know the hardship of trying to convince them to keep their hat on their head. And you'll also know that feeling of looking down into the pram to see that it's been discarded somewhere along the way. And your mind immediately turns to thoughts of, I hope it's not too far back. I hope we don't have to travel all the way back to find it. How long has it been since I looked? Well, you eventually find it, and you get to put it back on their head. And whilst you do, you have the conversation with them that says, I'm doing this to keep you safe. I'm doing this to protect you. I'm doing this out of love. Well, so too did God when he put that crown upon your head. Through the actions of Jesus Christ on the cross, that crown of glory has been placed there out of nothing more than love. The love that was born at Christmas. Our reading for today is Isaiah 35, 1-10. The desert and the parched land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it will burst into bloom. It will rejoice greatly and shout for joy. The glory of Lebanon will be given to it, the splendor of Carmel and Sharon. They will see the glory of the Lord, the splendor of our God. Strengthen the feeble hands, steady the knees that give way. Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear. Your God will come. He will come with vengeance, with divine retribution. He will come to save you. Then will the eyes of the blind be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then will the lame leap like a deer, and the mute tongue shall shout for joy. Water will gush forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand will become like a pool, and the thirsty ground bubbling springs. In the haunts where jackals once lay, grass and reeds and papyrus will grow. And a highway will be there. It will be called the way of holiness. It will be for those who walk on that way. The unclean will not journey on it. Wicked fools will not go about on it. No lion will be there, nor any ravenous beast. They will not be found there. But only the redeemed will walk there. And those the Lord has rescued will return. They will enter Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will crown their heads. Gladness and joy will overtake them. And sorrow and sighing will flee away.
Joy might have been in short supply for much of this year, and maybe some of us struggle to find much joy this Christmas. But reading today's passage in Isaiah, we're reminded that in our struggle, we are not alone. The prophet Isaiah was living during a time when God's people had been disobedient. They had disobeyed his laws. Some were living in exile and afraid of what was going to happen next. Like us, they must have been living through a season of fear and worry. But God made them a promise. Isaiah begins chapter 35 by describing the desert and the parched land and how they will rejoice and blossom. Maybe these last months have been like a desert for many of us, cut off from family and friends, feeling isolated. Life seems empty. But then think of the many little blooms that have flowered in your desert. An unexpected phone call, a friendly comment from a total stranger while out for a walk, a card or letter from a friend you've not heard from for quite some time, a friend coming to the door with a bunch of flowers just because, a beaming smile from a baby. These little joys brighten up our parched land. Verses 3 and 4 remind us of the power of God. It says, "He strengthens the feeble hands and steadies the knees that give way." His strength protects and defends us, and in time of trouble, he will always be near. There may have been difficult times in your life when you've spent every waking moment worrying about something. I know I have. But remembering God's promise to be there, his promise to support and walk alongside us through these difficult times, is a comfort and gives us strength. The troubles don't just disappear as if by magic, but having him walk beside us gives support and encouragement. Verse 8 begins, "And a highway will be there. It will be called the way of holiness." Our highway is not always smooth and straight. Often the way is rough and stony with many twists and turns, all kinds of dangers placed in our way. But with the Lord there to guide us onwards, we can trust he will lead us. The final verse finishes with a glorious description. "And those the Lord has rescued will return. They will enter Zion with singing. Gladness and joy will overtake them, and sorrow and sighing flee away." What a beautiful image. God's promise for the people of Israel so long ago, I believe, is still his promise for us today. Knowing of his promise brings hope, peace, and joy. So as we think about or listen to today's hymn, Joy to the World, let us sing out with joy the words of the final verse. "He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love."